Hello and welcome. Sorry I am a little bit late. Welcome to Q&A Live for Midlife Crisis in Your Marriage. I am Kendra Ruth from The Hero Spouse, here to answer your questions about midlife crisis and your marriage. And we are going live today in 3 places. We are going live on Facebook in a private group. We are going live on Facebook in a public group, and we are going live in YouTube. If you make comments in the private group in Facebook, your comments will be safe. But when you make comments in the public group, your comments can be seen by others. So I just want you to know, if you have come in through the private group, you're safe. But if you have come in through the private group, they're safe. But if you've come in through the public group, if you have friends and they get any notices, they may see those comments. Just so you know that. So let me go in for a moment and make sure everything is coming in as it's supposed to. And we will get started. I have about 4 questions I'm going to go through, and then I wanted to go through just at least 1, maybe 2 topics that I wanted to discuss as well today. And I'm just going to make sure everything is coming in as it is supposed to be coming in. So let's see if we're coming in on each screen. So let me see, refresh, and let me know if you can see me as well and if the sound is okay. So far, I don't see myself. So it says live. I'm going to check another screen. Hold on. So it looks like the private group, I don't see it working yet. Let's check on the public group. Okay, public group, it looks like it's working. Good. You can see me. Good. YouTube is working. Good. Thank you, Denise. That's great. Because that was where I was just going to head and make sure it's coming in. And I'm going to pull that screen up as well so I can just see it. Okay, good. So I'm not sure. I have to set up, the private group is set up in a different manner, and that might be a little bit wonky. So we'll just try it one more time. And if the private group doesn't come through, okay. And you're also on YouTube, I can see. So I can see that YouTube is coming through but I'm going to double check it one more time on the private group. And if the private group does not come through, clicking on events. It says go live to start event, and it's still not coming through. So I don't know why it is not coming through. So give me a moment. I am going to click the YouTube and put a message onto Facebook at that Facebook place just really quickly. Okay. Okay. So I'm just posting at the group to make sure that it goes through, in case it, don't know why that's not doing it. So hopefully that will work. And then Stand Up and Thrive is now open. So I am also going to put a link to Stand Up and Thrive in the group here so that you can all see that if anybody is interested in joining Stand Up and Thrive is my membership for forward moving spouses. If any of you are interested in joining our group, it is open until not tomorrow, but next Thursday, because usually I go live on Thursdays instead of Wednesdays. So it is open until next Thursday, a week from tomorrow, at 9 o'clock Pacific PM, 9 p.m. Pacific next week. So if you're interested in joining, we're open for a week and a day. And I will put that link in I haven't figured out how to do it in YouTube yet, but I'll put that link into the chat on Facebook, and you can find it everywhere else as well. So hold on just a minute while I do that, and then we will get to our questions. Or see if I can put it in the chat here. Nope. Okay. And that is going in the chat. Okay, so give me a moment because my printer didn't print, so I'm going to just read the questions off of my screen. And our first question is from Marissa. She has a bomb drop of January 1st, 2021 and a date of marriage of 2000. She's not familiar with contact types or energy levels. She says that my husband has been in midlife crisis for several years. And yes, given 2021, it's 4.5 years, isn't it? So I'm really sorry for that. She says, he moved out and we barely speak except when needed about the kids. And she doesn't say, unless it's in here later, that although bomb drop was 4.5 years, she doesn't say if he moved out back then or if the move out was more recent. She says, he's a different man, not the one I married. He is 50 years old, constantly on social media, talking like a younger person with his slang and acronyms and abbreviations, talking to random women openly. Nothing bad, just when you're his wife, it doesn't seem right. So basically, he's acting younger, right? MLCers typically regress to what I find to be about 17 years old. It's like he's looking for a new woman. So does this mean, Marissa, that he does not have an alienator? That he's just looking and interested in chatting them up? He's been doing this for the last 6 months. So 4.5 years, but he's only been doing this for 6 months. So he was on day and night, and then recently he stopped. It's strange. He got quiet. He doesn't like anything, not even our kids' posts anymore. So you mean on Facebook, he doesn't click like to, but he was doing that obsessively. It's like he retreated. Could this be a sign of progression in his midlife crisis or something worse? So it could be anything. We don't know why he's done this retreat. We don't know what happened, really. What you could be seeing is nothing. You could be, there could be liminality, but maybe he found someone. Maybe suddenly he's gone quiet because he has been looking for a new woman and he found somebody and he's spending more time with someone else. Not that I want to tell you that, but that could be it. And because we don't know. We don't know why somebody has suddenly stopped doing one behavior and started doing another. And the other behavior is, we don't know what the other behavior is because his going quiet means I don't know what behaviors he's doing. So everything is progress in the sense that they are moving forward, but MLC is hills and valleys. And so moving forward, MLC gets worse before it gets better. And so when it gets worse, they're still moving forward because it gets worse as they move forward. So it doesn't mean, oh, they took steps backwards. You know how when we talk about things, we say 1 step forward, 2 steps back. When we're describing progress, regress in that kind of metaphorical language. But if we're talking about an actual, if we were literally speaking about a path and you had point A and then point Z was the end, they're making their way on it. And the times where I say MLC gets worse doesn't mean they move backwards. That is part of the forward progress as they're going. It's just like they went down a hill and up a down a hill and up and down and up. And the down parts are when it seems to get worse. And maybe the up parts are when they cycle to seeming better. Or maybe they cycle toward closer to you, but maybe they're being mean. We don't know. Maybe the downhills are when they've vanished. It depends on the type of MLC you have. So it could be a sign of progress. Maybe somebody could be going inward when you don't see them. But with yours, there's some unanswered questions here, because you're saying that bomb drop was January 1st, 2021, midlife crisis for several years, and that tracks 4.5 years, several years, 2021. But you're also saying he's been doing this for the last 6 months. And you described standard replay behavior, but you're saying he's been doing it for 6 months. Bomb drop is typically the start of replay or escape and avoid. And if you are describing him as a replay behavior, which energy level you're not familiar with, you're describing replay behavior, and that would put him as a high energy replayer, because he is on social media talking like a younger person, using slang, acronyms, and abbreviations, talking to random women. Well, you're sort of describing him as that. You could also be describing him as somebody who's sitting in his parents' basement, not doing anything, because he's on social media doing all of this stuff, talking to them, but not going out with them. So a low energy wallower is somebody who has depression that seems more obvious, overt depression. It's what we think of when we think of depression. A high energy replayer is what we think of when we think of the bachelor party lifestyle. That guy who is out there acting like the teenager. They're wild and crazy. They have an affair, and they might have it open and public and flaunt it. They might not, but it's out there. Sometimes they flaunt it to you, but they keep it secret from their family. Sometimes they don't keep it secret from their family. Sometimes they bring it, the alien, out and announce they're going to marry her. It just depends on the person. The low energy wallower may or may not have an affair. They might want to have an affair. They might try. The other thing about the low energy wallower is for the first, say, 6 months or so. Could be 3 months, could be 3 weeks, but usually not a very long period. They might appear to be like that high energy replayer because they are trying to do it, but they fail at it. It's a more fun lifestyle, right? That, hey, I'm going to go out there and avoid the depression and self-medicate with limerence, that is the affair partner, self-medicate with partying, with alcohol, with drugs, whatever I can to avoid all of this. But it doesn't work for them. And the depression, they can't avoid it. It takes hold of them and it sinks them in. And that person is more likely than the other kind, not necessarily more likely than everybody, but more likely than a high energy replayer to stay at home or to return home. Not, I don't mean as a reconcile, but to come back home and just be like a lump on the couch and not be anywhere. Maybe seethe under the surface with anger. But they aren't as likely to have an affair because they don't have the energy. Or who would want to date them? Or they have a fantasy affair, or they have an emotional affair, and it just doesn't go anywhere beyond the emotional affair. And some of them do have affairs, but they don't go as high energy. They don't take to the same degree as the high energy replayer ones. And it just depends. They can. So you're saying he's been acting this way only for 6 months. What was the first 4 years? Like, not just the last 6 months. There's a little bit more confusion in that, because you're saying he's been in midlife crisis for so long, but then you're only describing 6 months of this behavior. So why was your bomb drop 4.5 years ago and not 6 months ago? Well, what came before that? Maybe he's a low energy wallower, and maybe this is low energy wallow behavior because Maybe maybe he's stuck in your parents' basement. He moved out. Did he move out 6 months ago? And that's when this behavior started. So he's really been a low energy wallower. And it's like he retreated just recently from the social media that you can see. You barely speak, other than when needed about the kids, so you weren't speaking much before anyway. So now you're just not seeing the same social media behavior because he's not liking things anymore. I can't really tell you that much about it. But it sounds like maybe you had more of a low energy wallower if that's the case. And he's trying to figure some things out. He doesn't know. Maybe he met somebody. And you'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks, what comes up. Or he could be cycling. MLCers cycle. They go through moods. They go figure something out and then retreat and go back and forth. We don't know. So you have to wait and see what it looks like next week. What mood is he in? How they change their minds. They're very mercurial. Okay? So I don't really have a big answer for you. It could be something worse, yeah. Because like I said, this could be an affair. Maybe he's progressing, but if you don't know, if you don't see what's happening, aren't there to observe this, it could be either. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's go on to number 2. Number 2 is an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of April 23rd, 2023, and married or together for 35 years. She has an at-home MLCer who's a low-energy wallower. She said, my husband is going through a midlife crisis. He had an affair from April 2023 to November of 2024. It lasted for the last 4 months of which were completely devoted. So in other words, this lasted from April 2023 to November 2024, but the last 4 months, I'm assuming, were higher in limerence. So the first bit weren't, even though it was over a year long. He dumped me for her. I caught him, and he said he was glad that I dragged him out of the situation. And did he refer to it as that situation? This is what it said in her writing, that situation. Okay. Since November, so November of 2024, we've been trying to repair a relationship. I let him, and this part is good, I let him break it off with that woman in his own way. He needed to do that rather than you letting that was his job. Okay. In July, he relapsed. This happens. After 3 weeks, I caught him again. He again says he's glad about it. He says he wants to continue with me. He knows he's going through a midlife crisis and wants to be rid of that woman. He's very passive about it, is what I'm noticing, okay? He wants to be rid of that woman. But he hasn't broken up with her. He gets caught in both situations. And he's just glad. Okay, so the question that you're having, though, is, what can I do? We're leaving on holiday together tomorrow. And I received this a few days ago, so tomorrow might have been a few days back. Okay? I'm sorry to be so blunt. I hope you can give me some brief advice. We're in counseling together, but our therapists don't view the situation from a midlife crisis perspective. And it is therapists plural, so I'm not sure if it is plural therapists or if it's just one and that was a typo. Okay. So a few things. Number 1, you're not always going to get a therapist who will view it from an MLC perspective or agree with an MLC perspective, understand the MLC perspective, or think that there is one. And by that, I mean, they don't know anything about it sometimes. They've not learned anything about MLC, or what's that? They just don't like, why would I consider that? Oh, what? They just don't have that lens. And if you tell them like, yeah, MLC, whatever, you don't know what you're talking about. It's, I'm going to look at this. Here's the thing though. You don't need that. You don't need to have a therapist who has to look at it through that lens. Why do we have to fit it in? So you have been together for 35 years, and you've each brought things into your relationship. And his midlife crisis and whatever you have gone through, there have been issues in your marriage throughout, and those have affected it. And he and you have both brought things in from your past, and whatever traumas and whatever other things you've brought from your family and from your upbringing, you've brought those in. And those are going to have an effect on your relationship, okay, and your marriage. And how your crisis and how his midlife crisis plays out. Those are what influence each person's individual crisis or individual transition, individual crisis of identity and transition. And whether we label it as this thing of identity, though, what the therapists are trained to do is deal with those things that come in. They don't have to put the midlife crisis label, transition label onto it. Okay, that part, they are trained to deal with the other pieces and let them do that, okay? Sure, he's like saying, you know what, I'm going through a transition in life and I want to make some changes. I want to find my purpose. I felt lost and I feel like I don't know who I am in this, and can you help me with this transition? And some of this transition is, comes from the past, and I feel lost in what, and they don't know they're from the past, these things. They being the MLCer. So he might not know to say those things. But we don't want to leave out the issues that are within the relationship as well. Okay. So here's what the other things I'm seeing. He wants to be rescued. And he wants you to do it. Because on 2 occasions, he got caught. Now, I don't know if he was being deliberate or not about that, okay? But he was really relieved to get caught. And he told you he was glad. He was relieved. He says he's glad about it. Well, let's see. I caught him. He said he was glad I dragged him out of that situation. You were the active person. He was the passive person. But he's the person in the situation, not you. So he didn't get himself out. You rescued him. Same thing happened in July. Now, I'm glad you let him break it off. I don't like the let him, but I know what you mean. Even if it was, I told him he needs to be the one to break it off. That is, you need to break this off. It's not my job. This is something that you need to handle this because I want to stay out of it. It's not for me to do. He needs to be responsible. And so some of the things that I see the problem is he needs to, I don't want to say man up because I don't want to gender it, but he needs to be responsible for his actions and not make you do it for him. He's trying to get somebody to rescue him. He had you catch him. Oops, caught. And then you pulled him out of it. And I'm so glad you caught me. Thank goodness I got out of that. What would I have done? I was trying to get rid of her. I'm so glad to be rid of her. Then break up. I know it's hard. I'm speaking to him. I know that it's hard. I get it. But you still need to do it. It's his job. It's not your job to break up with her for him, to solve the problem for him. And he's trying to get you to do it. And that's some of what needs to be addressed through the therapy, is how he's trying to get people to solve his problem for him rather than being accountable actively. It's not just taking accountability, isn't just acknowledging that you committed a wrong, that you did something, but it is taking the action to, it's not undoing, but to make amends and to heal and to get yourself out of a situation. So you first get yourself out of the situation, and he didn't get himself out of it, did he? He had you do it. That's the problem. So each situation is going to have some sort of an axis that they are going to revolve around. And maybe yours is he has somebody else try to solve his problems. And you are stepping in each time and doing it for him, aren't you? And he doesn't need that. He needs somebody who's going to, hey, you need to do it. I know I caught you, but you need to do it. So that's what I want, discuss with your therapist, is how to get him to take accountability in an active way, how to solve his problems, how to say, I am going to be the one to do it, not just make amends. Rather than saying, we're going to look at this from a midlife crisis perspective. It doesn't mean it's not a midlife crisis. It just work with what you have. And look at it from the lens of what within that, his crisis, has him passive and has him giving himself up so that others can take on responsibility for him. Why does he do that? Okay. And what is his purpose? Then you go into what is his purpose and what is he going to do? How is he going to take this responsibility and figure out what he wants to do with his life and then be active and do it? But he has to figure out some of why he's been passive also. Okay? And why you have then, have you seen that before? Have you seen a pattern like this before in your relationship? And if so, or if not, but it's been there, if you can look back and see it, then why have you stepped into that? What is your part in this dance that you're doing? Where's this codependence? And because both of you have something in this. And that's where the therapy comes in, okay? So I don't know if I'm onto something or not, but that's what I noticed in it, okay? So see if that can be helpful for you, okay? Okay, I'm going to go on to number 3. Okay, number 3, we have an anonymous female with a bomb drop of February 1st, 2023, a date of marriage of 1998. She has a boomerang who is a low energy wallower. She said she has a couple of general questions. First, can you talk about the alienator and the role that they play? And I did see some questions on the alienator in the Facebook page and by a few people there was at least one post about this asking various questions about the alienator. So maybe this is based from that. Does she help them through the crisis by playing the role of a parent that emotionally neglected them? Is she a distraction holding them back in processing the crisis? Is it always limerence that starts as a friendship, as in my husband's case? And then she says, they trauma bonded over wanting to separate from spouses. Despite it being 3 years, he still has not introduced her as a girlfriend, nor brought her to family events. He remains in denial with his kids and me. So there's one more question, but let's go to that one first. Okay. So, because there's a few. Talking about the MLC on the role, or the alien of the role of the parent. Does she help them through the crisis by playing the role of the parent that emotionally neglected them? Sure, I'm sure that can be, but it's going to depend on each unique MLC. So sometimes I think of that as the role of the animus. And if you want to look at that up the contrasexual complex in Jungian psychology, that would be to learn about the anima uh, and what that is. And you could also look up that if you're interested. I wrote about that in one of my articles. I'm going to find it for a second really quickly, and I'll try and post a link to that. So hold on a sec. Let me go to, in fact, I think, okay, hold on. I'm going to go to the main. It is on my main page, and I always find things by going to my main website and going to my table of contents in case anybody's interested, because it's the easiest way. And this is in the shadow article and section 2, contraceptual complex. And let me get over here. And so there's that. And that is actually the second piece of an article. So if you want to back up on that one, you can actually read the whole piece because it's the shadow chapter. And so there's a piece before that. And then you can learn about this contraceptual complex. That doesn't mean that in every case. Everyone's going to be unique. Okay. So let me get back to the question so I can make sure to review and make sure I'm going over each piece. But you specifically asked, is it always limerence? Sometimes it's a role of a parent that emotionally neglected them, because that can be. There is imagotherapy, which I believe is Harville Hendricks. Imagotherapy, I very, very, and in a down and dirty description of it is, I say you marry your issues. Or you marry, and often it is, you marry the opposite gender parent. I could be saying that wrong, but you marry the parent with whom you have the issues, and you would fill in the blanks of your issues, if I said that properly. But let me think on that one. So if you have one parent that you had an issue with, you might be filling in some of the gaps in some sort of a development by marrying that issue. Kind of creepy. But for information on imagotherapy, you marry your issues, I would look at look up Harville Hendricks. Okay. Is she a distraction holding them back in processing the crisis? Yeah. So I think one of the questions on the Facebook page was, are they helping them through the crisis? Not in a literal way, but in the other way, yeah, because that's how this crisis is done. But is she a distraction? Yes. And the way I see it is midlife crisis in a vacuum. Well, I think midlife crisis in a vacuum would be not a crisis, and maybe it would be a transition. So in other words, if they had no distractions, what would the timeline be? In other words, if there weren't an alienator, but they were still crisis, and if it were just still feeling existential crisis and depressed, but they didn't have an alienator, maybe they had a bottle, drinking it or something like that, but there was not an alienator to come at them with their own words and, pulling them away from their marriage and saying, well, you need to get away from her. It's too bad you're in a bad marriage, and fighting against and resisting all of that. Yeah, that person does work against it. Just like if you're standing for your marriage, but there is a divorce in process, the system can work against your stand because you're trying to make it go slowly. And so let's say you wanted to drag out a divorce, but you have to do these things on this divorce schedule, and you have to follow that. And maybe you have certain reasons why, but you'd get in trouble by not. and you're not trying to be mean and negative, but you have to do that. And there are certain things that'll go against your stand, even though you're trying to do something good. And it's not that the system is trying to be bad. It's just they don't have the same goals. Okay. So she's holding him back in the crisis. Chuck's alienator, there was emotional blackmail. So she went and faked a pregnancy. What do you think that did to him? Especially someone who at that time used his crisis to tell me, oh, you know what? I guess I don't want children. And since we both wanted children, but he'd been really the one pushing, listing names, everything. I knew it wasn't really true, but I knew something, it was a big thing. I knew this was something was real, was hit. My intuition said, this isn't just, some weak problem that's going to last a week. And so he left and immediately started talking about having kids with her and started taunting it with me and started giving the names that we had been planning. None of our kids have those names. I mean, adopted kids, they came with their own names, but still. She started trying to get pregnant also. Is that holding him back? Yeah, and then she fakes a pregnancy? She tried to trap him with it? Yeah, that's going to hold him back. And then a few months later, she told him that there was water on her brain, that she was going to die if she didn't get it fixed. And if he didn't return to her again, come back to her again, she wasn't going to have it fixed, so that she would just die. So when I tell you that she said she would commit indirect suicide, that's what I mean. She threatened indirect suicide. Yeah. So imagine if it were true, and that water in your brain is going to kill you, and it's real. And imagine if this had been true and it had happened, and the guilt that they would have. Imagine that. All of these things. I'm going to let myself die if you don't come back to me. I mean, yeah, of course that is emotionally immature on her part, but what kind of guilt does that do to a person? How is that going to hold them back? That's emotional blackmail. We had to have her removed by the police at a year after that or so, when she came onto our property, when he left her. She came on, she was banging at our back door. She came through the back alley, so that would be more of a private road, entered our property and was with my dog at the door and banging and screaming at her, and she banging on my glass door. And the police had to remove her. Yeah. But she kept telling him. And you might think, that's crazy. Why does he keep going back to her? Well, she also told him, I left everything for you. I'm going to lose my job without you. I didn't do any of that to him. I did not guilt trip him. It's not my job. It's not fair. That's emotional blackmail. But he felt responsible. She told him that he was responsible for her happiness and everything else. Okay? He had to be the hero. And she told him how I didn't need him, which is true. She said, well, Kenda Ruth is strong, so she doesn't need you. You need to be here. I need you. She had a hysterectomy not long after she faked a pregnancy. I need you. You need to stay and take care of me. Yeah. You need to be where people need you. I'm weak. She's strong. You should be where I'm a weak victim. Seriously. That holds somebody back in their crisis. It's not healthy. Okay. Is it always limerence that starts as a friendship? Why? Why would it always be one way or another? No. It's each person's relationships are going to start in various ways. Same as any other romantic relationship with, one romantic relationship starts this way with one couple and another one starts another way. So Some of them might have been friendships that they've had for years. Some of them might have been that couple that I never liked her. That's the one he has a relationship with. Then it was somebody they met in a bar last week. Well, they were already getting their midlife crisis and they were suddenly available and just looking. Okay. Despite it being 3 years, he still has not introduced her. And he remains in denial. Does he remain in denial to you? You mean he's trying to tell you, no, I'm not seeing anybody? Or just that he doesn't bring her around? Because you don't have stupid written across your forehead. Okay. And so he can keep doing it, but you're like, yeah, I'm not dumb. We all know you're doing this. Okay. Okay, let's go on to your second question, though. Can you talk about the MLCer's family staying connected to the forward-moving spouse and the benefits? His family continues to stay connected to me, and I've been cordial with everyone except his sister. She's referred to me as the ex-sister-in-law despite a divorce not filed. She's the only family member he clings to. Everyone else engages and keeps me on speed dial. I'm even going to his family wedding overseas, and he's not. So he remains in denial and he has not introduced her to his family or brought her to events. Does the family know anyway? Especially since they're close to you. What do they know, even though he hasn't brought her and you say he remains in denial, but do they know? You didn't say he keeps it a secret. You said he remains in denial, and those aren't exactly synonyms, but they're similar. Okay. So that's kind of, but beneficial. I love it that they support you. That's amazing, and you are so blessed. It is highly beneficial. Not because they're taking sides. I don't like to see it. I like the way you put it in even. I like that you said it's a benefit, not that they are taking a side. Because you have a system of support, and you have a system of support for reconciliation. That means that they are not enabling him. And yeah, he's got the sister. That's one. But the rest of them? Now, is your concern that he feels rejected by them? That could be. Are they rejecting him though? Or is that just how he's feeling? And that could be also. But it also can be that they're not rejecting him, but he is rejecting them because he's feeling betrayed because, well, they're taking your side because they like you. It could just be because they like you and he's feeling that way. That's his victim view. And my hope for that is that his family maintains their maturity and continues to support you. Not take a side with you, but support you and recognize, say, you know what, we're not going to reject her because you're being a jerk. We're here for you, but that doesn't mean we're going to reject and betray her either. Doesn't mean we're going to give you money to betray her. I would hope it also go that way, but we'll see. Eventually, sometimes it does. They will turn. I hope it doesn't. It is amazingly beneficial to have the support of the family. Amazingly. So you're very blessed so far. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to save the rest that I have. I have a couple left over. Please keep sending more, though. It's great to have more. But there's a couple of topics I wanted to go over. And the first is there was at least one comment where one of the left behind forward moving spouses from on the Facebook page was referencing his wife. And, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I do this, and I want to say, well, this is a side job, but it's not a side job. It's my passion. I've been doing it since, Bomb Drop in 2005, and I created the website in 2008. And it's a large job in that, but it's not, it's not full income or anything like that. I don't make the house money. This is, my job is taking care of 5 kids. And that's a big job. I know what it is. I didn't during midlife crisis or anything like that, but I know what it is to be the stay-at-home mom. And one of the things I didn't know back then is they said women want to be appreciated. And this is what I would read in marriage books, relationship books. Women want to be appreciated. Men want to be respected. And I always said, I want to be respected. I mean, it's, the appreciation, I guess, but I get it now because, and I don't know if others see this or agree with this or understand this, but to me, the respect is up here. I want to be respected for my mind and my brain. I want to be respected for the work I do. I want to be respected for my professionalism. I want to be seen as credible and what I do and what I can give back in that way. A large portion of my day is spent standing in a kitchen doing dishes. I want to be appreciated for it. When I'm doing that, I just have earbuds on and I'm listening to podcasts, maybe some lectures, things like that to keep myself going and busy. But I'm making my sourdough bread. I'm making, the cookies for church. Sure. Most of my day, it really is standing on my feet in the kitchen. I don't even know what I do all day long. It's cutting up fruit for smoothies. It's this and that in the kitchen. There's a lot of laundry. I make the kids do a lot of that. Okay. I know what it is. Women want to be appreciated. And it's not just women. So I think maybe part of what that is when it's I don't want to say high level, low level. It's not that. But it's when I'm doing the things that I feel are using my brain and the professional things out there. And maybe also the passion things that I've worked that are about my core person. I want the respect for that. The things that I do, the little things, not low level, but the little things that I do, I just picked up your socks and underwear. And all those, can't you just appreciate what I do? The appreciation. But you know what? Those aren't me. Those are the things I do, the little chores. And the comment was, my wife, and I can't remember the timeline, was it 20 years, 25, 30, 35? She's been a stay-at-home mom, and I don't want to call you out as rude or anything, because stay-at-home mom, homeschooling. I could never homeschool my kids, so that's amazing. Usually I say, oh my God, no way. 5 kids homeschool. I have one of my foster parent moms does homeschooling, and I'm like, are you insane? Oh my God. No way. Mm-mm. Send them off. But homeschooling. And the comment, though, was about, she said how she's changed. And it was, why does she think she's changed? And I might get the phrasing wrong. Why would you think she hasn't changed? Is she the same? I don't know what age she was when you married, but if you've been married for 20 years, and let's say she were 22 and 42 now, is she the same 22-year-old woman? Or, I think she's going to be, she's 55 now, because you said she doesn't expect to live past 60. I don't know why you didn't explain, other than that there's a medical condition. But if she's 55 now, and let's say, is she the same as she was when she was 30? Because I'm not. Why do you think that she would not have changed? Every single one of us has changed in multiple ways. We have grown, we have matured, and every person, male and female, is changing constantly. And if we are not changing, we're stagnant. And that's what part of what midlife transition is about. And it is about finding who we are and who we are going to become. And women and men, there are men who stay at home with children and men who lose themselves in their jobs or on the treadmill of life, both men and women. Sometimes forget who they were. I am a writer. The bookshelves over here, I have about 1,000 picture books. The kind for 4 to 6-year-olds, because that was what I studied. My dream was to write picture books. Mythology, though. Mostly, my love was mythology and traditional tales. Hans Christian Andersen. That's my dream. And it wasn't actually because I love children. It's because I love those stories. And when I told people I want to write for children, they said, "Oh, you should write science for children," because my degree is in science. I have a bachelor's degree in biology and then almost another one in chemistry. I said, "No way. I like mythology." What did your wife stop doing when she had children that she left? That was her core person. Because some men out there think, well, why can't somebody just be happy? Why can't she just be happy being a wife and a mother? Because that's not who we are. Otto Frank died in 1980. That was 35 years after the death of his family members. 35 years. He was 91 when he died. 35 years later. And I'm sure he was extremely sad, but he had a life. He didn't give up on life. Okay? And so the core of his being was not being their dad and their wife. The core of his being was something else within who Otto Frank was. And that's not a bad thing. And sure, he left a great legacy of, who Anne Frank was. And that became much. But he was Otto Frank. He wouldn't have been able to survive to 91, probably, if he didn't have that core strength of self. And so what your wife is looking for, what our MLCers are looking for, is that self. They are changing, and they want to know who they are. And so when anyone asks, well, what are they changing? Why are they changing? Or how could they think they should be changing? Or, the question confused me or kind of shocked me is, why would you think, you being not you, the one person who said it, but any of you, anybody, think that your spouse, and I know many of you get it and know that your spouse is changing, but why would those of you who don't, why would you think your spouse isn't changing? Why would you think that your husband or your wife would stay the same? That person that you married would stay the same as when you married them. Okay? Because each person is a unique individual who is going to grow. They're going to go through life and they're going to learn. We are all people. We are not automatons. We're not, what is that? That term for, I can't remember what it is. It's not tradwife, but it's the other one. I can't remember. But think of it as robots. We're humans and we are going to change. And so it makes me think that you just kind of expected her to be this person whose place was just should be satisfied with having these children and raising, and why can't she be satisfied with that? But you could be very satisfied with that, but the children are going to grow. And what happens then when they're gone? That's what I mean with Otto Frank. At least with your wife, her children are going to grow up and still be around, hopefully. But what happens when the nest is empty? They don't just come back from where they are now. And she comes back and everybody's at home. What happens when they do grow up and they leave home and they have families and they have children and you become grandparents? And then the roles change from being parents to grandparents. The roles change. Shouldn't she change with them? If she can't change with that role, then there's going to be a problem with the new parents who are your children now. They're going to have a problem with her being with the children because she's going to overstep her boundaries. She needs to change. She needs to be able to change. And so your expectation of why should she think she's changing? And so that's a problem. And so midlife she's figuring that out. And that's part of why she's in a crisis, because she is stuck in this and being seen as, I'm just in this is my job and I don't know what else I'm supposed to be able to do. Apparently here I'm the teacher because I have, I'm homeschooling them, and I'm the cook and I'm the maid. But what is my purpose? Who am I? I have these roles, but who am I? And she has to figure that out because she needs to know who she is beyond the roles she plays. She can still play those roles. But I have to tell you, sometimes there are so many of those roles that there isn't time for her. There are some nights now I'm up till midnight and up at 5. And everything is getting squeezed. Okay. When she needs room to fit her in. And where's that room? Okay. So, more topics. Let's go over some more topics next time. Okay. It is 1:00 and I know everybody's going to be waiting for me upstairs. But if anybody has any questions about that or any thoughts on it, let me know. Okay. So I will see everybody on Monday when we have another Q&A live. Stand Up and Thrive is open. So if you would like to join or if you have any questions about it, let me know. You can let me know in the Facebook group. You can let me know by tagging me in posts or anything. Or just start a post. Or ask Tessa, and she can let me know whatever you would like. Okay, I will see you on Monday. And for all the Thrivers, we have another group coaching session tomorrow. So I'll see everybody at the next time we have whatever meetings you're going to be at.